Okay, get ready for this one because this deep dive is a bit of a hot topic, you know? It's about actress Jessie Cave, and you probably remember her as Lavender Brown from the Harry Potter movies. Well, she recently said that she's starting an OnlyFans account, and while the internet, totally exploded, some people are, cheering her on, and others are, really criticizing her choice.
Yeah.
But before we, really get into it, I want to be super clear that we're here to try to understand what's going on, not to judge anyone. We've got two pretty interesting YouTube videos where people are debating this whole thing, and also a news article that kind of explains what's going on. And what we're really interested in is the big picture, why are people reacting so strongly to this, and what does this whole situation tell us about how society views stuff like, sex work and these online platforms that are everywhere these days.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting situation, especially since OnlyFans has become so popular. This platform is really right in the middle of this whole cultural debate, It's making us rethink everything we thought we knew about sex work and personal branding and even the future of work itself. I mean, seeing someone like Jessie Cave, who we all kind of know, from the Harry Potter movies, stepping into this world is adding fuel to the fire. It's really gotten people talking.
So let's get into the specific. From what Cave says in these YouTube videos, it seems like there are a few different things that are motivating her, to join OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, she's been pretty open about her money problems. She's talked about needing to replace her whole roof and even dealing with some pretty scary stuff like arsenic-lead wallpaper in her house. It sounds like she's in a tough spot, financially.
And, you have to remember that being an actor can be really unpredictable. Even if you've been in a huge franchise like Harry Potter, there's no guarantee that you'll keep getting work. That financial pressure is something that a lot of actors face.
It makes you realize that even celebrities have regular people problems too, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not all about money, is it?
Right.
Cave has also talked about feeling kind of stuck in her acting career and wanting to try something new. I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of wanting to explore different paths and find something that we're really passionate about.
Totally. And that's kind of where OnlyFans comes in, It lets creators tap into really specific interests, what they call niche content, and connect directly with their audience.
Oh, I see.
It's like having your own online store for whatever you're passionate about.
And in Cave's case, she's focusing on content related to hair, which, from what I understand, caters to a pretty specific audience.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty smart strategy.
Mm-hmm.
By focusing on a niche market, creators can build a really loyal following and make a good amount of money. And someone like Cave, who already has fans, from her acting career,
mm-hmm.
has a built-in audience who might be interested in whatever she's doing.
But obviously this whole thing has been controversial. The people in those YouTube videos we mentioned, they have some pretty strong opinions about Cave's decision.
Yeah.
One of them even calls her a degenerate and says that Hollywood is like this ruthless machine that chews people up and spits them out. And both of them seem to think that Cave is having a mental breakdown and that she's being taken advantage of. They even go as far as to say that her partner is basically pimping her out.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. And it's important to remember that we shouldn't be making assumptions about someone's mental health without, a professional evaluation. It's just not right or fair to jump to those conclusions, and it kind of reinforces harmful stereotypes.
It's like everyone has a theory, but nobody really knows what's going on,
Exactly. And this also brings up this bigger issue about the stigma around sex work. OnlyFans is making society confront these uncomfortable issues and re-examine what we think is acceptable and what's empowering and what crosses the line,
And it seems like there's this moral debate happening. On the one hand, you have people who are praising Cave's decision and saying it's a brave move and that she's taking control of her finances and her future. And then on the other hand, you have the YouTube commentators, and one of them even quotes the Catechism of the Catholic Church to condemn prostitution and say that it's against human dignity.
Yeah, it's a really complicated issue with a long history and cultural background. What's interesting here is that this situation with Jessie Cave and OnlyFans has become like a microcosm of this bigger societal struggle. We're trying to figure out how to balance evolving views on sexuality and personal freedom with these long-held beliefs about morality and exploitation.
So we have this mix of personal circumstances and financial realities and these clashing moral views. It's a lot to unpack.
Right, and I think the most important thing is to remember that there are no easy answers here. We're dealing with really complex issues with a lot of gray areas. What's important is that we approach this conversation with open minds and a willingness to understand different points of view.
You're saying we shouldn't jump to conclusions and just try to see all the different sides of the story.
Yeah, exactly. Because this isn't just about one actress and her choices. It's a reflection of these bigger changes in society that are affecting how we view work and intimacy and personal empowerment in this digital world.
Wow, this is making me think a lot about the future of work and how technology is changing how we make a living and express ourselves and connect with each other.
It's a really interesting time to be alive, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And as these trends keep evolving, the ethical and societal implications are only going to get more complex and more important to think about.
Yeah, it feels like we've just scratched the surface here. But I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on where we go from here. What are some of the big questions we should be asking ourselves as we try to navigate this constantly changing digital world?
So now that we've set the scene a little bit, let's dig into the technical side of OnlyFans, how this whole platform actually works.
Yeah, okay, so for those of us who aren't super familiar with OnlyFans, can you break it down for us? How does it work?
Sure. Basically, OnlyFans is this subscription-based social media platform where creators can share all kinds of content, like fitness tips, cooking tutorials, and more adult stuff too.
Okay.
It's basically a way for creators to make money from their passions and connect with their audience without having to go through traditional channels like studios or publishers.
So it's kind of like a direct connection between the creator and their fans with nobody else taking a cut.
Exactly. And that's a big part of why it's so appealing, especially for people who feel like they're limited or taken advantage of by the traditional ways of creating and sharing content. On these accounts, creators get to set their own prices and decide what kind of content they want to share, and they can interact directly with their subscribers through private messages or live streams and stuff like that.
It sounds like it gives creators a lot more freedom and control over their work and how much they earn.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the main benefits. And because it's subscription-based, creators can potentially earn a regular income, which can be really helpful in terms of stability and financial independence. But of course, there are also concerns about things like exploitation and the potential for abuse.
Right, like those YouTube commentators are talking about. They seem pretty worried that Cave was being exploited in this whole thing.
Yeah, and those concerns are valid. It's important to acknowledge that any platform where money is changing hands, especially when it comes to adult content, there's a risk of exploitation and people with bad intention. There have been cases of creators being pressured into making content they're not comfortable with or facing harassment from subscribers.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a
Right.
way, right? It empowers creators, but it also exposes them to these risks.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these open and honest conversations about the complexities of platforms like OnlyFans and to look at both the good and bad sides instead of just dismissing them completely.
So how does all of this relate to Jessie Cave specifically? Do you think she's making an empowered choice, or is there reason to be concerned?
Honestly, I don't think we can know for sure what's going on in her personal life or what factors are influencing her decisions, but we can look at the bigger picture and see that she's part of this growing trend of people who are looking for new ways to use their skills and build a career online,
It's like the lines between work and entertainment and personal branding are all getting blurred.
Exactly. And that's a really interesting thing to observe. Platforms like OnlyFans are part of this shift towards what's being called the creator economy, where people are building their own businesses around their passions, their skills, and their online presence.
So it's not just about making content, it's about building your own brand, creating a community, and finding new ways to make money from your...
You got it. And I think that's a pretty exciting development, creating new opportunities for people who maybe don't fit into traditional careers or who feel limited by the way things have always been done.
But isn't there a risk that this whole creator economy could just become another form of exploitation where people feel pressured to constantly be making content and hustling for every dollar?
That's a really good point. And it's something we need to be aware of as this trend keeps growing. We need to be talking about things like fair pay, ethical content creation, and the potential for burnout in this fast-paced online world.
Yeah, it's like we're all trying to figure out this new territory, How do we balance being creative and making a living, but also taking care of ourselves and our mental health in this digital world?
Right. And that brings us back to the core of this discussion. How do we reconcile individual freedom and empowerment with the potential for harm and exploitation in this system that's still kind of in its early stages?
That's a tough question and one that doesn't have an easy answer. What are your thoughts? How can we move forward in a way that supports individual choice but also protects people?
I think one of the most important things is that we keep having this conversation and that we really try to understand the systems and structures that shape our lives and challenge our own assumptions and bias,
It's like we need to come up with a new set of ethics for this digital age, right? One that acknowledges how complex and nuanced these online platforms and the creator economy really are.
Yeah, I think you're right. And part of that means recognizing that the choices people make are often influenced by larger societal forces and systemic inequality. We need to look beyond individual actions and try to understand the bigger context.
So it's not just about judging whether Jessie Cave's decision is right or wrong. It's about trying to understand all the different factors that led her to this point.
Exactly. And that requires us to be more critical thinkers, more empathetic listeners, and more willing to engage with perspectives that might be different from our own.
This is really making me think think about the future of work and how technology is reshaping how we make a living, express ourselves, and connect with each other.
It's a fascinating time to be alive, that's for sure. And as these trends continue to unfold, the ethical and societal implications are only going to become more complex and more significant.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface of this conversation, but I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on where we go from here. What are some of the big questions we should be asking ourselves as we try to navigate this constantly changing digital world?
Wow. It feels like we've gone down a lot of different paths in this conversation about Jessie Cave and OnlyFans. Is there a way to tie it all together and think about where we go from here?
It's true. We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about individual choices, societal pressures, financial realities, shifting morals, and the rise of the creator economy. And what's really fascinating is how all of these things are connected. Is they're all part of this bigger cultural shift that's happening right now.
So it's like we're seeing the old world collide with the new world, Traditional values bumping up against new technologies and changing social norms. Yeah, exactly. And in the middle of all this change, we're trying to figure out some pretty basic questions about what it means to be successful and what's ethical and how we define personal empowerment in a world that's becoming more and more digital and decentralized.
So where does Jessie Cave's decision to join OnlyFans fit into all?
Well, I think your story is like a lightning rod, It's highlighting these tensions and starting a conversation that we need to have about the changing nature of work, the challenges of online platforms, and how creators and their audiences are relating to each other in new ways.
It's funny, at the beginning of this deep dive, I thought we were just going to be talking about one actress and her controversial career move. But now I'm realizing this is about so much more than that. It's about all of us and how we navigate this world that's changing so fast.
I think you're absolutely right. This isn't just about Jessie Cave. It's about all of us. It's about how we adapt to new technologies, how we deal with shifting morals, and how we redefine success and fulfillment in a world where the old rules don't seem to apply anymore.
I think what I'm taking away from this conversation is that there are no easy answers, no simple solution. We're all just trying to figure things out as we go, both as individuals and as a society.
Absolutely. And that's okay. In fact, I think it's a sign of progress. It means we're wrestling with these complex issues, challenging our assumptions, and being open to new ways of thinking and being.
So where do we go from here? What are some things we can actually do to navigate this new world in a way that feels empowering and responsible?
I think the most important thing is to stay curious, to stay informed, and to stay engaged. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions, to challenge the status quo, and to seek out different points of view.
It's like we need to be okay with uncertainty, with ambiguity, with not having all the answers, because that's where real growth and learning come from.
Exactly. And remember, we're all in this together. Let's have open and honest conversations. Let's support each other, and let's try to create a future that's both innovative and fair.
Well said. This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's been a really interesting conversation.
And to our listeners, we hope this conversation has given you some new insights and inspired you to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep the conversation going.
Remember, the journey of understanding never really ends. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to discover. So stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.